work and application, you can achieve. So this is the opportunity that you have with us. Coming into a space, realizing that you're working in a professional space and that you've got an opportunity. The next thing will be, can you apply yourself? Can you work hard? Can you put that effort in? Can you match the effort of the coaches? And then anything is possible. The day-to-day experience of being in the academy is to combine both training and your education. So a typical day would be to arrive at 9 o'clock in the morning for a 9:30 start, and you would work in a classroom with your teacher. We offer the NCFE level 3 in sports and sports performance. So you'll be working on your individual modules throughout the term and the year. And then in the afternoon you would have lunch, and in the afternoon you would have your football coaching training session. So, and then maybe on the Tuesday that would reverse. You'd start with a coaching session in the morning, have your break, and then you would do your teaching in the afternoon. We play on a Wednesday in the daytime, and we play in 2 leagues, and then you're back in for some light training Thursday and lessons and training Friday. So it's a full-time schedule, requiring a full-time commitment from the footballers. So that's what a typical program would look like. In terms of the content of that, all the coaches are all B licensed and A licensed UEFA coaches. So we will have a syllabus of work, of coaching work, which players will work throughout the term and the year. And they'll be working on a number of aspects of the game: defending, attacking, and transitional play. And within that, set plays as well. So they'll cover all aspects of the game throughout the year, and they'll learn about positions within that, about their position on the pitch, and they'll also learn about how a team shape and how they'll be expected to play within that. So they'll learn the small bits about individual performance and how to play a certain position, but also how that fits within a team model. As players come to the end of the program, we do an assessment with them, an individual player assessment, which they would have had done throughout their terms. But at the end of the year, we have a conversation around where they are as a footballer and where we think that they would be the right level of introduction into full-time men's football, or senior football we call it. And so players will be given the opportunity to go and do pre-seasons with clubs if we think that they've reached that level. So it's a question of where they are in terms of the level they've reached at the end of the program, and then we are very much trying to get them into senior football with our contacts in senior football. My background is in non-league football, so I have a number of contacts within that, and so if we think a boy is good enough, we're more than happy, of course, to put him forward and into the next step of his football journey. Other pathways boys have gone on to do has been university as one pathway, and further education, and we've had a number of boys that have gone on to study at university, and through that have developed into having a career within football. One boy particularly went to Bath University. From there he worked with the FA with player cams and with goal line technology, and he's currently now working with a professional club dealing with the statistics of games and game analysis. So he's a success story of a boy that didn't pursue a pathway into football, but went via university back into the game, and we call that a success story in itself. A boy that perhaps wasn't quite of the level he needed to be a footballer, but has gone on to study at university and then come back into the game via his career, which is probably going to be game analysis. So in terms of football success stories, one player stands out for me was a boy that joined us when we were having a partnership with Welling United. He played most of the season in midfield, and he was left-footed. He'd never been to any academies before. He hadn't been picked up by any academies. He was a boy from Camberwell, and he went on to play at various football clubs, and currently he's playing in Scotland. So he's now 32. And so we've been running these programs for 16 years. So we know that some boys are lucky and do get to go on and pursue a career in football, and he was one of them. So he's a success story. Another success story was a boy that ended up playing in Scotland. He came to us as a 16-year-old when we were partnering Welling United, and I first worked with this boy when he was 6 years old at a school in New Cross. So here was a situation I found myself as a coach where I'd worked in a primary school with a group of boys, and 10 years later he comes into the academy we were running at Welling United. And you know, he was much the same boy as he was then. You know, loved his football, really enjoyed playing, and he was a forward. He loved scoring goals. He had 2 years with us, done very well, and then he went, I think, to Billericay, and then Southend, and then he ended up playing, I think, for a Scottish team. So he played for a number of Scottish teams. So for me, that was a success story, because I knew that boy as a 5-year-old come all the way through primary school, met back up with him at 16, went on for a professional career as a footballer. So that's really sort of encouraging for all boys, regardless of their backgrounds, that if they work hard and they show that type of dedication to the game, they can be successful. I think in terms of football, I always think that the players, they come to you and they might have an idea of where they think they should play, but in the end the game chooses a position. This is something that young footballers, perhaps they don't quite understand yet, but when they start to play and they develop their physical and their technical abilities, it becomes more and more obvious where they're going to end up playing. So we like to think that we're developing footballers, and that eventually the position they play will be found through the experience of coming to the academy. So we try to encourage players to be open-minded about where they're going to end up playing, and we try to also make sure that they experience different positions while they're with us, so they're not playing in one particular position, that they'll be asked to play in several positions. In other words, what we're trying to do is encourage them to understand the game as well as be a part of the game, to understand the game, and sometimes that teams will need you to play in certain positions, whether you think that's your position or not, but also that through your development you will end up maybe in a position you can't anticipate now. So just because of the way you develop as a footballer and as a person, you're more suited to a certain area on the pitch. So I see my role as a director to facilitate the learning, primarily about their learning experience, but also about their football experience. So making sure that they've got the right sort of coaches that are doing the right type of coaching in terms of making sure that the planning is there, making sure that coaches know what their roles and responsibilities are. That's one of my aims, making sure that we are on target with things like that, making sure that that the teaching is of a standard that's required, and that the boys are attending, and making sure that they understand the importance of the education. So that's one of my objectives as the director. Also to support the coaches in terms of their personal development, to make sure that this is part of their coaching journey, and it's not just doing a job, that they're important as well, and that we are a bit like a family. We're not a big organisation. We have around 55 students, and we have 4 or 5 coaches and some support staff, but we are very much like a family unit. So it's about building relationships within what we're doing, and developing trust, and working hard together. So it's all about getting those sort of key principles going within what we're doing, so that the boys understand that it's not all about them, that it's also about people around them and all the support they get. We expect players to be punctual, to turn up when they're supposed to turn up for lessons and games and training. We expect them to be respectful of the opposition, which we encourage through making sure that things like changing rooms are cleaned, but just in an everyday way. So making sure that when we meet each other in the morning, we say hello, we shake hands, and we be professional with each other, and polite and courteous, and we give each other that respect that we both deserve as footballers, coaches, and across the board. So that's a really big thing, that we like to think that when the boys leave, they're confident and capable human beings who can go on and have a career in if not football, in other areas in their journey. The main aim for me for a footballer is that they're enjoying their experience, because if they're enjoying their experience, they're going to commit to the work itself. In other words, if what we're doing is fun and enjoyable, they're going to do more than they perhaps would have done otherwise. So we massively like to create enjoyable spaces where it can be fun but hard work as well. So it's not just about fun, but fun must be a key component, if you like, in terms of what we're doing. So players that are enjoying their training are going to be that much more committed to what they're doing, because they're enjoying it, and enjoyment is a big factor of what we're doing. We're lucky because we get to do what we enjoy doing, which is to play football and to coach football. So we have to be respectful of that, respectful of the fact that we're doing something that we enjoy doing, and so many people unfortunately are not able to say the same thing. So we have to nurture that and cherish that. It's not something to take for granted, because it won't be all the time that you end up doing things that you enjoy doing, and we're in that privileged position. What other opportunities there are within FCA is that players are given a space to develop their coaching skills. So we have a number of partnerships with local primary schools, and this allows us to work within those primary schools and give some of the boys who are interested and who want to develop a coaching career, that opportunity. So we run a coaching program in a number of primary and secondary schools, and boys, if they would like to carry that on and develop themselves, will be given that opportunity to work within that setting. We think that's a really positive thing, because it ticks an employability box for the players. They get a chance to be on time to a work situation, they get to plan and prepare a session, and they then get to deliver that session with support from a senior coach. So in that way, we're looking at their confidence, their punctuality, attendance, their ability to be where they need to be at a certain time, and then to be able to organise themselves enough to plan and deliver a coaching session to a group of young children. So we think this is a really important part of their development, because it just gives them that bit more responsibility, and the responsibility to do such a thing obviously has that positive effect in terms of them as footballers, because now they're able to manage themselves better, and that development and that managing yourself can feed back into the game.